Carl Jung's shocking truth: life begins when you find yourself. Have you ever had a moment where you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize who you were anymore? Not just physically, but psychically, spiritually. Like your face was familiar, but your soul was a stranger. That moment, however terrifying, is sacred. Because according to Carl Jung, it's in that moment when your constructed identity begins to crumble that your real life might actually begin. Jung didn't just believe in psychology as a science of behavior, he believed it was a map to the soul. And his most shocking truth is also his most liberating: that life doesn't begin when you're born, it begins the day you decide to find yourself. But what does it mean to find yourself? That phrase gets thrown around like confetti in modern culture. People say find yourself like it's a weekend yoga retreat or a gap year in Bali. But Jung meant something far deeper. He meant confronting the parts of you that you've hidden from the world and from yourself. He meant peeling off the masks you've been wearing to please your parents, your community, your culture. He meant facing your shadow, the dark, denied, suppressed parts of your psyche that you've spent a lifetime avoiding. And Jung's shocking truth is that until you do this, until you meet yourself fully, you're not really living. You're just performing.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
This is a brutal realization, because we want to believe that we are already ourselves, that we are the sum of our choices, our jobs, our relationships. But Jung forces us to ask, what if the you that you've been building your whole life isn't actually you at all? What if it's a carefully curated persona created to survive, not to thrive? And this isn't just theoretical, it's deeply practical. How many of us live lives that feel like scripts written by someone else? How many of us wake up with a sense of quiet dread, not because something is wrong, but because everything we've built is based on something false? Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. It's not inherently bad. We need personas to function, to play roles, to connect. But when we mistake the persona for the self, we get lost. We begin to live in a house of mirrors, reflections of who we think we're supposed to be. And slowly, imperceptibly, we drift away from our essence, from the wild, chaotic, divine mystery at the core of who we are. And here's where Jung drops the existential bomb: the only way to recover your real self is to descend into your own unconscious, to go inward, not in a soft, meditative way, but in a fierce, confronting way, and to face the parts of you that you hate, deny, repress: your anger, your envy, your sexual desires, your fear, your wounds, your potential. Because your unconscious isn't just a trash bin of repressed emotions, it's the source of your creativity, your power, your destiny. And Jung believed that the unconscious is just a version of you that's been buried under years of social conditioning. So let me ask you something radically personal. What part of yourself have you been pretending doesn't exist? Is it the artist inside you that was told art doesn't pay the bills? Is it the rebel who was punished for questioning authority? Is it the lover who was shamed for being too emotional, too intense, too vulnerable? Jung would say, that's where your soul lives. Right there, in the part of you that you've labeled too much or not enough. And the cost of ignoring that part, it's staggering. You might achieve success, but feel empty. You might be loved, but constantly afraid of being found out. You might be surrounded by people, but feel utterly alone. because no one can truly see you if you've never met yourself. You're constantly performing, hoping someone will love the mask and terrified that they'll see through it. This is the existential crisis that sparks the real journey, the journey of individuation. Jung didn't just theorize about this, he lived it. He broke down in the middle of his life. He turned away from fame, from status, and dove into the depths of his own unconscious. He recorded dreams, painted visions, dialogued with inner archetypes. And what he emerged with was not just sanity, but a deeper wholeness, a sense of alignment, a new kind of life. And so, this is where we begin, with the terrifying, beautiful idea that life doesn't start when you're born. It starts when you stop running from yourself. When you stop playing the role the world gave you and begin uncovering the person you were born to be. That's not easy, and it's not safe. But it's real, and anything real is worth the risk. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the forest. We'll explore the shadow, the most feared part of Jung's teachings, and how it secretly controls your life until you face it. Because if finding yourself is the beginning of life, then facing your shadow is the rite of passage. The hidden monster within, why you must face your shadow or be devoured by it. Let's not pretend this is going to be easy. Carl Jung didn't sugarcoat the journey of self-discovery. He knew that before you can walk into the light of who you truly are, you have to first travel through darkness. And that darkness has a name. It's called the shadow. Not a metaphor, not a myth, but a living, breathing part of your psyche. A part that you ignore at your own peril. Jung's warning was clear: if you do not face your shadow consciously, it will control you unconsciously. It will leak into your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, and eventually your destiny. So what exactly is the shadow? It's every part of you that you've disowned, every impulse you've repressed, every emotion you were told was bad. It's the rage you swallowed to be polite, the envy you denied to seem humble, the arrogance you buried under false modesty. It's your lust, your greed, your selfishness. But it's also your power, your confidence, your ambition, your magic. The shadow is not just darkness, it's potential trapped in exile. And here's the kicker: the more you deny it, the more power it gains over you. Think of it like this. Imagine you're walking through a haunted house, but instead of confronting the ghosts, you pretend they're not there. You smile, you distract yourself, you tell yourself everything is fine. But the ghosts don't disappear. They lurk. They grow stronger. And eventually they find ways to haunt you through nightmares, through self-sabotage, through addictions, through failed relationships. Jung's genius was seeing that the shadow doesn't just live in fantasy or horror, it lives in you. And it's patient. It waits until your guard is down. Then it takes the wheel. Let's bring this down to real life. Have you ever exploded in anger and surprised even yourself? Have you ever done something you swore you'd never do and didn't know why? Have you ever hurt someone you love, not out of malice, but out of some uncontrollable force inside you? That was your shadow. Acting out, not because it's evil, but because it's ignored. Jung believed that the shadow only becomes dangerous when it's rejected. When it's integrated, when it's brought into the light, it becomes a source of strength and authenticity. But integration isn't about acting on your darkest impulses. It's about understanding them. It's about asking, why am I angry? Why am I jealous? Why am I afraid? It's about learning the language of your own darkness. because that darkness is trying to tell you something. Maybe it's warning you that you've betrayed yourself. Maybe it's begging you to set boundaries. Maybe it's reminding you that you have needs too, that you are allowed to want, to feel, to be. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's the real work. Not pretending to be good, but becoming whole. Not avoiding your inner demons, but confronting them with honesty and compassion. That's where transformation begins. Let me ask you something dangerous. What is your shadow trying to tell you? What part of yourself have you locked away because you were afraid it would ruin the image you've built? Facing your shadow is terrifying because it threatens your identity. It forces you to admit that you're not always the hero of your story, that sometimes you're the villain. But here's the paradox. Only by accepting the villain within you can you truly become the hero you were meant to be. The greatest people in history, Gandhi, Mandela, Jung himself, weren't great because they were perfect. They were great because they wrestled with their shadow and came out the other side with scars and wisdom. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Because if you don't face your shadow, it will find ways to face you. Through conflict, through crisis, through collapse. And when that happens, you won't be ready. But if you do the work now, if you look your shadow in the eye and say, "I see you. I won't run anymore," then something miraculous happens. The monster becomes a guide. The darkness becomes a doorway. And the part of you that once felt like a threat becomes your ally. That's the secret Jung discovered. That your wholeness is hiding behind everything you're afraid to feel. And if you're brave enough to face it, really face it, you won't just find your shadow. You'll find you. In the next part, we'll climb out of the underworld. We'll explore individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you actually are. Because once you've faced your shadow, the next step is to build a life that reflects the truth of your being. Becoming who you are, the sacred journey of individuation. You've stood at the edge of yourself. You've stared into the abyss of your shadow, and maybe, just maybe, you've begun to understand what it's trying to tell you. But facing your darkness is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning. What comes next is the most sacred and profound human task, to become who you truly are. This is what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, of aligning your inner world with your outer life, of transforming from a fragmented self into an integrated being. And if you take it seriously, it will change everything. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's not about self-improvement in the way we usually think of it, more discipline, better habits, more success. No, it's about becoming real. It's about stripping away everything that is not you, everything that was inherited, expected, or imposed, and allowing your true nature to emerge. It's not about addition, it's about subtraction. But who are you without the fear? Without the performance? Without the constant pressure to be what others demand? But here's the catch. Becoming yourself is the most rebellious act you can commit in a society that thrives on conformity. The world doesn't want you to individuate. It wants you to fit in, to follow the rules, to play your role. From a young age, we're trained to abandon ourselves for approval. We're taught what to value, what to believe, what to fear. And so we build lives based on borrowed truths. We become doctors, lawyers, influencers, not because it's our calling, but because it's safe. It's acceptable. It earns applause. But individuation is not about applause. It's about alignment. It's about listening to the quiet voice within that says, "This is who I am. This is what I must do." Even if no one understands, that voice never yells. It whispers. And the more noise you allow into your life, the more distractions, obligations, false identities, the harder it is to hear it. So individuation begins with silence, with solitude, with radical honesty. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What dream have you abandoned to be who the world wanted you to be? What part of yourself have you silenced just to keep the peace? Individuation invites you to pick up those broken pieces, to reclaim the lost parts, to reintegrate what was cast into the shadow. And as you do, something extraordinary happens. Your life begins to make sense. Your struggles, your patterns, your wounds, they stop being random. You see the deeper story. You begin to realize that everything you went through was preparing you for this the moment you stop living someone else's story and start living your own. But be warned, individuation requires sacrifice. You may lose friends. You may disappoint family. You may have to walk away from a life that looks successful but feels dead. Yet what you gain is priceless: yourself, your essence, your truth. And once you have that, no one can take it from you. So, are you ready to stop performing and start becoming? Are you ready to risk comfort for authenticity? Because if you are, then you're already halfway there. Up next, we'll bring everything together. We'll look at how finding yourself changes how you love, how you work, how you see the world, and how, as Jung believed, your wholeness might just be what the world needs most. The world needs you whole. How finding yourself heals more than just you. Here's the most unexpected part of this entire journey. Finding yourself is not just a gift to you, it's a gift to the world. Carl Jung believed something profoundly revolutionary, that individual transformation has collective consequences. That every time one person becomes whole, they don't just heal themselves, they introduce order into the chaos of humanity. Think about that. Your decision to confront your shadow, to embrace your truth, to live authentically has ripple effects far beyond your personal life. It changes the energy you bring into every room. It affects how you love, how you lead, how you create. And when enough individuals do this inner work, society itself begins to shift. We live in a world starving for wholeness. A world of fractured identities, performative morality, masked pain. We see it every day in politics, in media, in relationships. People shouting over each other, not out of strength, but from wounds. People clinging to ideologies not out of wisdom, but out of fear. Jung warned us, when people avoid their inner darkness, they project it onto others. They demonize what they refuse to face in themselves. That's how wars begin. That's how families fall apart. That's how systems become corrupt. Because people are split inside, and they bring that split into everything they touch. But imagine something different. Imagine a person who has faced their darkness and made peace with it, who no longer needs to control others to feel safe, who can listen deeply because they're not afraid of being wrong, who can lead not from ego, but from clarity. That's what individuation creates. Not saints, not gurus, but grounded human beings, people who are real, rooted, whole. And this is where your journey becomes a form of service. You stop trying to fix people and instead become someone who inspires them to fix themselves, not through advice, but through presence, through integrity, through example. You become a mirror, not one that flatters, but one that reveals. And the people around you feel it. They might not understand it at first. They might resist it, but deep down, they'll sense the truth in you, the freedom, and some part of them will begin to stir. Have you ever met someone who was utterly themselves? Someone who didn't flinch at emotion, didn't avoid conflict, didn't shrink or inflate in the presence of others? That kind of person is magnetic. Not because they're perfect, but because they're whole. They've stopped running from themselves, and that makes them safe to be around. We trust people who are integrated. We feel their gravity, their stillness, and their depth, and that gives us permission to drop the act too. So here's the final question I'll leave you with. What would your life look like if you stopped hiding? What would the world look like if more of us chose wholeness over approval, truth over comfort, realness over performance? Because that's the revolution Jung was pointing toward. Not a revolution of politics or technology, but a revolution of the soul. One person at a time, remembering who they are, reclaiming what was lost, refusing to live a lie, and in doing so, becoming the kind of person this world desperately needs. This is where life truly begins, not when you succeed or get it all figured out, but when you find yourself, when you stop running, when you look in the mirror and, for the first time, see you not the mask, not the persona, not the story you. And when you do, you'll realize something shocking. The life you've been waiting for has been waiting for you all along.